the headlines didn't just break, they erupted. By sunrise, every major outlet was flashing the same explosive words across television screens. Kennedy sued him for $110 million. A Schiff's response ignites firestorm. But behind the bold fonts and breathless anchors was a human story, raw, emotional, and far more complicated than anyone expected. It all began on a quiet Tuesday morning in Washington, D.C., when Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a figure long accustomed to turbulence, filed a staggering $110 million lawsuit against Congressman Adam Schiff. The political world froze, as if holding its breath. Lawsuits weren't new, political clashes weren't new, but these are the scale, the symbolism, the timing felt different. Cameras flocked to Kennedy first. He stood outside the courthouse, shoulders firm, voice steady, yet his eyes carried the fatigue of a man who had spent years fighting battles both public and private. Reporters could sense that there was history here. There were wounds that hadn't healed. Behind the scenes, Kennedy's team whispered about betrayal, censorship, and reputational harm. For him, the lawsuit wasn't just legal paperwork, it was a declaration that he refused to be silenced again. But the story took its sharpest turn that evening. When Schiff finally emerged to respond, the nation leaned in, not out of curiosity, but out of sheer disbelief at what he might say. Instead of the expected defensive fire, Schiff's response was surprisingly human. He didn't attack. He didn't deny. He didn't even deflect. Standing beneath the cold glow of the Capitol lights, Schiff spoke with the calmness that contrasted the chaos around him. His voice wavered, and not in fear, but in sincerity. "I won't let this become warfare," he said gently. "We can disagree, we can challenge each other, but we cannot destroy each other. Not now, not in this country." The air shifted. Journalists who had prepared for a political brawl instead found themselves recording something closer to a plea for unity. But the emotional depth of his message didn't end there. Schiff acknowledged that the past years had left scarcity on political figures, on public discourse, and on ordinary Americans trying to navigate truth in a world drowning in noise. He admitted that mistakes had been made, not just by opponents, but by everyone caught in the fray. And then came the moment that sent the headlines into their volcanic explosion. Schiff extended an open invitation to Kennedy, not to debate, not to spar, but to sit down face-to-face, off-camera, and talk as two human beings, not combatants. "We owe the country more than conflict," he said. "If there is a way forward, it begins with conversation, not courtrooms." In a city that thrives on division, the gesture was unprecedented. Even Kennedy's team was momentarily stunned. Over the next few days, the nation reacted with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. Commentators argued, supporters raged or applauded, and social media erupted with hashtags ranging from #1 10 million shocked to #Schiff steps up. But something remarkable happened beneath the noise. Polls began to show a subtle shift. People weren't suddenly choosing sides. Instead, they were asking deeper questions about how long the country could survive an outrage alone, and whether leaders might finally choose understanding over escalation. And then, late one Friday evening, after nearly a week of tension, Kennedy released a short, measured statement. He would meet with Schiff, not with cameras, not with press, just the two of them. The revelation sent a ripple through the nation. For the first time in months, hope, small but unmistakably, began to flicker through the political darkness. When the two finally met behind closed doors, no one knew exactly what was said, but witnesses noted that when they emerged hours later, neither man looked triumphant, neither looked defeated. They looked a broken bar, relieved, human, real. And in the following days, something even more surprising occurred. Both sides agreed to pause the legal battle while they explored private resolution. The lawsuit that had threatened to split the country down another jagged line became, instead, the beginning of a fragile, unexpected bridge. In a time when shouting had become the national language, this moment became a reminder, quiet but powerful, that even the most bitter conflicts can shift when courage meets humility. In the end, the $110 million lawsuit wasn't the headline that mattered. It was the response, brave, disarming, humane, that changed everything. And maybe, just maybe, it offered the country something it desperately needed. A reason to believe that dialogue isn't dead, and that even in the stormiest moments, unity still has a pulse.